Okay, good evening, everybody. Anyone that's watching online, thank you for taking your time to listen to what's going on at this meeting and to watch. Call to order the Centerville Board of Education meeting for Monday, September 28, 2020. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh.
Here.
Dr. Rohr.
Here.
Mr. Schroyer.
Here.
Megan Sparks.
Here.
Mr. Dahl.
Here, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please be seated if you're standing. Okay, the next item on our agenda is to approve the agenda as presented. Need a motion, please?
So moved. Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Dernbaugh.
Yes.
Dr. Rohr.
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer.
Yes.
Megan Sparks.
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is honors. Dr. Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Tonight we have Rajiv Goyal representing the Centerville Education Foundation. And Rajiv is going to share a little bit of information about what the foundation does and talk a little bit about the funding of the classroom teacher grants as well. So we'll turn it over to Sarah Swan, and Rajiv is here to speak to us tonight. So there's Rajiv right there.
Hello, Centerville. My name is Rajiv, and I'm one of the board members of the Centerville Education Foundation. And thank you, Dr. Henderson, for letting me steal a couple of minutes from the Board of Education meeting. First of all, if you have never heard of Centerville Education Foundation before and have no idea what we do or why we exist, that's my fault, because I take personal responsibility for making sure that everybody in Centerville at least knows who we are. And while I can't go into every detail today, just know that Centerville Education Foundation is essentially the PTO of the school district as a whole. And we take on three main projects throughout the year. One, we provide grant money to Centerville teachers who want to buy extra supplies, equipment, and technology to support their students in special projects. Two, we raise and manage the funds to give out many of the scholarships that we award to the CHS seniors who are going off to college. And three, we recognize outstanding teachers, students, alumni, and community members at our annual Hall of Fame Awards. Now, traditionally, to support our fundraising efforts every summer, we, at the 4th of July Americana Festival, as a fundraiser, we sell 50-50 raffle tickets. Now this year, obviously the festival was canceled. And so we actually sold tickets through the mail, the good old USPS. And it was actually a fairly successful fundraiser for us. So I'm happy about that. But tonight I want to announce that the winner of that 50-50 raffle, which we drew last week, is Matthew Green. Now, Mr. Green is a math teacher at Watts Middle School, and he just won $250. So congratulations, Mr. Green. And all the other teachers at Watts, if he tells you that he's too broke to buy you a coffee, you know he's lying, because he just won $250. Finally, I just wanted to announce that in about 2 weeks on our website at centervilleeducation.org, we will be posting the details of the classroom grants that we are hoping to fund this year. So teachers have submitted their grant proposals, and we'll be posting those to the website. And so when you see the announcement in your email, definitely click on that link and it'll take you right to centervilleeducation.org, and you'll be able to browse through all the proposals from the various teachers in every building and every grade level. And you'll see some pretty creative projects that the teachers are planning to do this year despite the different learning environment. And in fact, a lot of them, I just heard Sarah just told me, you know, you would think, well, we're doing online learning, but you know, I just heard of an art teacher who's distributing art supplies to all the students for them to do the art project at home. So the need for those types of supplies and equipment and technology is still there, despite the fact that we're doing online learning. So when you see that email, definitely visit centervilleeducation.org and you'll see all of the great projects that our teachers are doing and that they need funding for. And that's all I had. So thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rajiv.
Brief. Okay, the next item on the agenda is hearing of the public. The board provides this opportunity for public comment before any official action is taken. Since we are having this meeting remotely, citizens were asked to contact the board central office, indicate their desire to speak to the board during this time period. Speakers have been asked to provide their name and address. Minors are only asked to provide their name. Speakers have been asked to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes, as the board has other business to conduct tonight. The board will listen to all comments and generally not engage in discussion or refer any necessary follow-up to the superintendent. Board members may be contacted through the board offices or through their email addresses. Ms. Swan, do we have anyone to speak to the board tonight?
Yes, right now I have two community members here to speak, so I'll invite them up one at a time.
Thank you.
You can take your mask off when you're in front of the computer.
Hello,
Hello.
my name is Marcy Sherman, and I'm a parent to Bernie, a kindergartner at PVN. I know that some really difficult decisions are being made right now, but I was hoping that you would consider my perspective. I'm an attorney at the Public Defender's Office, meaning that I'm constantly surrounded by the general public and frequent the jails, where COVID cases tend to spike. We've already had one positive case in our office. Because of my job, my husband and I made the hard decision in March to keep our children home. When Centerville gave us a choice, we didn't hesitate to choose the online option. And when Centerville decided to have all children at home, we were ecstatic. We keep our children at home, not because they might catch the virus, but because we feel a duty to protect other kids who may not have the same risk exposures of our family. Over the last month and a half, Bernie has cultivated a wonderful relationship with his awe-inspiring teacher, Mrs. Panucci, as well as 15 other children his age in his class. He wakes up every morning so excited for school. He loves turning on his own computer and seeing all of his friends on a screen. He thrives on the daily routine. He has a community and feels a sense of belonging. Pulling that away from him would be devastating. Finally, I want to add that we are a military family. Bernie has been in 4 schools in 3 years. We do not want to choose between stability or exposing other students. While deciding on the best course of action, we hope that you have taken people like us into consideration. We look forward to all of your solutions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm David Cobb and I live at 9086 Payne Farm Lane. I am proud to be a Centerville High School graduate, a retired Centerville School staff member, and the parent of 3 Centerville School students. I am also a member of the Village of Elks because I agree with its aim to improve the family connections, education, and experience for students of African descent and multiracial students of African heritage in the Centerville City School District. As a parent, I have looked forward to Centerville schools bringing their students back into the classroom when it is safe. I believe our teachers will teach better and our students will learn better once we are back in class, in-person learning. I also believe that students, their families, and our community will be stronger and healthier and happier once our students are back in the classroom. Now, that being said, I know the virus is still out there, having infected at least 7,800 people in Montgomery County alone, and it has killed 163 of us at least. And recovering from the virus, that isn't even enough. You know, according to the Mayo Clinic, the virus can damage a person's lung, heart, and brain, increasing the chance of long-term health problems. And many of the Centerville families are like mine, with members who are at increased risk of serious complications if infected. Now, I am currently employed as a school bus driver for a private school, and I have seen that procedures like wearing masks and social distancing and keeping windows open for better air circulation are difficult to maintain, even by the most committed people. And I think we all know that some people aren't even that committed. I know from my social media that some of my friends and former coworkers are skeptical about the dangers of the virus at all. But with an average incubation period of around 5 days, and in some cases 14 days, we might not know a student or staff member is spreading the virus until it is too late. So please, as you make and improve plans to bring students back into the classroom, keep those plans realistic and flexible. Please err on the side of keeping our community safe and healthy. I hope you will continue to act courageously, as I believe you have already, listening to experts and making good decisions for the good of our community, for now and for the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sarah, do we have the third one?
No, just those two at this time. So
If they show up, will you let us know, please?
I will. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is board and administrative reports. First one is legislative report. Ms. Sparks.
Hello, everyone. Currently, there are a lot of hearings going on in both the House and the Senate. A few things have been passed by the Senate and are moving on to approval of the House. There are two bills, though, that I want to share with you. The first, the Senate bill passed Senate Bill 16 by a vote of 31-1. The bill requires public high schools to instruct students in proper interactions with peace officers during traffic stops and other encounters. This bill moves to the House now. Also, the Senate bill passed Senate Bill 311 by a vote of 20-12. The bill prohibits the Ohio Department of Health, ODH, from issuing a general mandatory statewide or regional quarantine or isolation order that applies to and is enforced against individuals who have not been either directly exposed to or medically with the disease that is subject of the order, and allows the General Assembly to adopt concurrent resolutions to rescind certain ODH orders or rules for preventing the spread of contagious or infectious diseases. The bill now moves to the House. Finally, Governor DeWine signed House Bill 606 last week. This bill provides liability protections to school districts during the pandemic. This bill will take effect in December, but is retroactive from March 9th, 2020, and will go September 30th of 2021. That's the end of the report tonight. Thank you.
Megan, before you leave, I read the first bill you talked about interacting with policemen, and everyone agrees that there should be appropriate conduct when you're dealing with police. But the bill doesn't put any information to us about what class that's supposed to be taught in, who's going to teach it, no curriculum. It's sort of nebulous, and it doesn't even indicate if the Department of Education is going to establish those. So I'm wondering really how effective that's going to be in our schools.
All I read about was the language and how they were going to try to make the language not like a law class, which is good for the high school level. But that was the only thing that I could really find that was helpful. But I thought it was interesting that they're educating kids on how to interact with law officers.
Like that would be a good parent thing to do also.
True.
Okay, is that all you have, Megan?
Yes.
You're doing the student board reps report too?
Yes. Grace, you want to lead that, please?
Yeah, so we're actually meeting next Sunday. We were waiting to meet and try to come up with a plan of what we were going to do to reach out to our students until after we figured out what we're doing for going back to school. So we're meeting this coming Sunday to try to come up with the plan, and we hope to get that plan out in the next few months.
Thank you, Grace. Good job, everyone.
Next item on the agenda is the treasurer's report.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. Just a couple of quick comments. We went over in depth the new financial reports that we're taking a look at now on a monthly basis, which are before you tonight for approval for August of 2020. Again, just a reminder, we're looking at that on a monthly basis now to see how our budget, our monthly budget compares to how we actually fared. And so I'm not going to share that report again tonight because again, we did that in depth at the work session. That's kind of my plan, is to look at that and talk more in detail at the work session. And if you want me to share more in the future, I can, or if there's something notable, we can definitely do that. One of the other items on the agenda for tonight is the permanent appropriations. This is a statutory requirement. It's an item that you have every September on your agenda. So the amount is a little bit higher than normal, but that's only due to the bond refunding that we did. We have to actually post that transaction on our books. And so this will get us in compliance with the county auditor's office. And then finally, under the treasurer's recommendations, you have the 5% increase to the Anthem insurance premiums. And again, we did talk about that in depth at our last meeting, and I didn't hear back from any of you with questions. So that is our recommendation tonight going forward.
Okay. Any questions from this?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dave.
Laura, a couple of questions on the appropriations resolution, just more for an explanation.
Sure.
Two things. One is line item 401, the auxiliary services. You know, they're a little over $1 million. Can you explain, just for the general public, because I think we've got a lot of folks listening tonight, what that goes for? And just to show, basically, it's to support non-public schools. That money we're getting goes to non-public schools. Could you just explain that a little bit?
That's correct. And I may ask Tammy for a little support on this one, or Dr. Henderson, but we do receive auxiliary services funding that is used. We hire some staff with that, and we place those students, or excuse me, those staff members as teachers and other support staff at Spring Valley and Incarnation as well. So again, those are grant dollars that come to us, and they just basically flow through us to support the non-publics.
Second part. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, in addition to what Laura just stated, public school districts are, basically mandated to work collaboratively with the non-publics, and so we do that. Tammy meets with and Cherie and Adam, members of our curriculum department as well, and work with them. So even though they are flow-through monies that come in through our district, those non-publics do have discretion as to how they want to spend the money, what they want to spend the money on, and then basically we assist them in achieving whatever those goals are that they want using that money that flows through. So we actually, in some cases, are involved with hiring staff that actually work at one of the non-publics full-time, or providing other services and materials and supports that they need, want, and are part of the things that they need to support their students there as well.
Tom, are those some of those monies from tax levy monies when folks in our community pass levies? Is that some of that money, or is that a separate grant money?
No, those are all separate grant monies that come from that come from the state and the federal government.
Okay, Laura, one last thing on the student wellness piece. I noticed in 2020 it was basically zero, and this year it was 700,000. Was there a shift in terms of categorizing this thing, and tell us about that?
No shift. We actually did receive $350,000 last year, but we did not spend any of that. So that's why the appropriation in fiscal year 20 was zero, is because we deferred and waited to spend that. So we're utilizing those sources of funding for South Community this year. And so it was 350 last year, 350 this year, for a total of 700,000.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions for Laura? Seeing none. Now we're on to superintendent reports. Dr. Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. I've asked Cherie Colopy if she would share her screen, which is she's going to basically share the PowerPoint that I'm going to use for my presentation tonight. So she's going to help advance the screen for me while I kind of do the talking. So as you know, we spent some time at the work session talking about the plan looking towards the second quarter and looking at the status of school and students. So as you all know, I know I don't need to remind anybody of all of this, but just a very brief recap of the first quarter. You know, we basically started the school year, as you know, in a remote learning environment. And this week actually marks the 6th week of school in that remote mode of learning right now. Even though remote learning has been challenging, we've had great attendance and are really grateful to our students. Obviously, our staff have worked extremely hard, and also for the support of our families who are working hard as well to support their students. In addition to that, we'd also like to give a shout out to our Student Nutrition Services Department and our Transportation Departments because they have helped continue to distribute meals. Meals have been available to our families who qualify for free and reduced lunch throughout our community, and they've been supplying that at 7 locations since the first day of school. In addition to that, you know, we were very concerned about providing equity for all of our families across our district. And so we have deployed and distributed over 4,500 Chromebooks to families in our district. And in addition to that, over 200 Wi-Fi hotspots for families who were lacking connectivity or were struggling with connectivity. So again, we've worked really hard to make sure that everybody in our district have been able to be connected and have that connectivity. And our teachers and students have basically been using 2 modes of operation. The first one is Google Classroom, where they've been actually dropping in assignments, videos, lectures, all kinds of different things that are part of the daily instruction. And then using the Zoom platform, which we're using right now, so that teachers could actually, you know, visibly connect with their students every day. For our older students who actually changed classes, middle school and high school, the teachers were actually, you know, zooming in every single class and working with students every day. So we feel like the rigor that we have going on right now in this remote learning situation is much, much better, much improved than it was in the spring when we just had a couple of days to be ready to get started, to be prepared for remote learning when we were shut down. But we also know that remote learning isn't perfect. And so what I want to talk to you tonight is a little bit about where we're heading in regards to that. I would also say that the other challenge, and one of the speakers tonight mentioned it, is that the virus is all around us. And we know that, you know, it's here, and we know that we have to be very careful. And we actually had, from a staff standpoint, about 80% of our staff were going in every single day into their classrooms and teaching remotely, you know, from their classrooms. Currently, we have about 130 staff members who qualify for some kind of a leave. Some of those are in regards to childcare leave. Some of those have to do with other health conditions that they have. And they've all supplied the appropriate documentation so that they've been able to teach remotely, you know, from home, and while either keeping themselves safe due to health restrictions or in other cases dealing with childcare issues. So, you know, that situation with staffing was also part of the decision as we look to move forward for the status of school and the status of our students as I continue talking to you tonight. So next, please. So as always, you know, we've told you all along and all summer that, you know, we've been preparing for different options as we look towards this school year, this coming year. But the guiding principles that we have never wavered from are the 4 that are on your screen right there. I wanted to always make sure that we're safeguarding the health and the safety of our school community. We were making sure that we could ensure effective and equitable teaching and learning opportunities. I think that was illustrated by the deployment of the 4,500 Chromebooks and the hotspots. Working hard to support the emotional and well-being of our students and staff, and providing service to our community. So those were all things that we were working hard to do. You know, recently, as I've continued to be in meetings with public health and other health professionals, especially our public health director is encouraged by the trends that they're seeing right now. We know that we currently are still red in Montgomery County, but the situation is improving every single day. And they believe that we will change those colors within this week or possibly the week after. They've also changed the recommendation about the remote learning mode and have talked about the importance of bringing students back into our classrooms. So we are definitely, listening to the health experts, looking at the data, paying attention to the improvements that are happening. We know that the virus is still around us and still out there, but there are some things that we've been able to see that are, illustrating that things are improving. We've also been paying attention to some of the other school districts that maybe are not in the county. Some are in the county, but some in counties that neighbor us or close to us, and taken some hints and some suggestions of how maybe they've been managing the COVID-19 cases. And we've also, over the last quarter or the last 6 weeks, have on a very limited basis been bringing students into our school buildings. And those included some of our special needs students in our structured resource rooms, our preschool students for related services. We've had elementary students come in to take the MAP tests, the measures of academic progress, and just started recently bringing in some of our Centerville High School career education students who have very hands-on needs to get on equipment and machines and things like that for their learning. So, we've continued to look at all of the protocols and working hard to make sure that we were on track to make decisions, safe decisions for the second quarter. Next, please. So our goals for the second quarter is that, my recommendation would be to reopen school buildings to students on Monday, October the 19th. We are going to still offer that remote learning option through the second quarter for families that are uncomfortable or unable to return to school. We made that promise in the summer, and we will honor that promise. So again, we will still offer that remote learning option to families that choose to do that. We are going to ask our families to choose what option they want. Once again, we did that back in the summer before we started school in August. And so tomorrow, and via technology, and Sarah Swan will be pushing out information, asking parents to make that choice again. And they'll do that electronically. It doesn't take but a second to do that. And that'll help us drive our continued planning as we get ready for the second quarter on October the 19th. I think because we have been in the remote mode, we feel very much prepared, and we hope it doesn't come to this. But should we have to pivot to some other kind of learning option, if there was an outbreak in one of our buildings or across the district that would require us to do something and change, we feel like we're prepared to pivot very quickly, and that both our staff or students are prepared to do remote learning should we ever need to go back to that again. So one of the things that we're going to ask students to do is to bring their laptops back and forth to school every single day, so that they have them with them in school if they're returning in person, and that they take them home every night so that they're prepared to be ready should we need to change what we're doing. So again, our plans are to come back 100% in person on Monday, the October the 19th, but there still will be that remote learning option. Next, please. From technology, the standpoint, like I said, we have given out quite a few devices. We are now on track and received good news just this week that order that we placed will be arriving sooner than we thought. And so when we do come back on October the 19th, we will be able to give all students that did not ask for a device while we were on remote learning, meaning that they had them at home or had enough equipment at home, that we'll be assigning a device to every student. This eliminates the situation where we have to sanitize devices, and eliminates the situation where students are sharing those devices. And then a little bit later on this fall, we hope to have additional devices for the other K-1 students in our district as well. We are getting a new order of hotspots in to make sure that we have those available to any families that are eligible and need those as well. And then our technology department has continued to work very hard establishing a website and a help desk to assist with any kind of technology related issues. So this is something that's been up and running, but again, something that we just wanted to mention that will continue running even though we're looking to move back in person. Next, please. I've kind of divided these up into two options. The first option that we're looking at is in-person learning. And the second option would be, if parents choose to go that route, would be the total remote learning. And that's option number 2. Next. So one of the things that we remembered and we've thought a lot about is that, for some of our students, they really haven't set foot into their new schools. And so what this would mean is like first graders who have been promoted to second grade have never really spent time in their new school buildings, in those 2 through 5 buildings. The same situation has occurred for last year's fifth graders who moved on to sixth grade and are now, been remote learning with their middle school teachers these last 6 weeks, but they've never really spent that much time in their middle school. And the same scenario is going on with last year's eighth graders who are now freshmen at Centerville High School. We also know that our students really haven't been back in our school buildings in a learning situation since last March. And so, what we would like to do is do somewhat of a soft start to the school year. And we'd like to take Thursday, October the 15th and Friday, October the 16th, and bring students back in somewhat smaller sections of students. So on Thursday, October the 15th, we would like to bring all K-12 students into the building with last names between A and K, their last names beginning with A and K, and they'd attend school all day on Thursday, October the 15th. And then we would pick up the other half of the students, the other K through 12 students, last names L through Z, on Friday, October the 16th. And we believe this will help us and give us an opportunity to transition students in a good way. It'll allow us to deal with smaller numbers of students. We can discuss routines, expectations, start to reestablish connections and build those relationships, which we know are so important. So because that's the last week of the first quarter, that Wednesday will be a remote day, like it always has been. And then on both Thursday and Friday, October 15th and 16th, the teachers will still put assignments into Google Classroom, but then we will be having half of the students come in on Thursday and the other half on Friday. Again, we'll be working hard to make sure that we provide a smooth transition for all of those students as they come back into our school buildings. Next, please. So what does the learning schedule look like that we're looking at right now as we come back on October the 19th in person? So first of all, we are continuing to build on our first quarter schedule. All of the students that participate in the in-person learning option will attend school all day on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. On Wednesdays, at least through the second quarter, there are 8 Wednesdays in the second quarter prior to the winter break. All students will continue to learn remotely on their current abbreviated schedule that they do right now. Our teachers are going to be asked and will be required to not only teach in person, but they will be expected to open up a Zoom session and continue to support and teach those students who are learning remotely as well. So, those students will have their teacher and will learn remotely as well, and the teacher will continue to teach in person. So that Wednesday on that abbreviated schedule, there will be learning taking place remotely, but it will give our staff an opportunity to collaborate, to check with students, to problem solve any situations that they may have, and deal with those effectively on every Wednesday through the second quarter. So there are 8 Wednesdays, and we think that this will be an opportunity again for collaboration, allowing for independent student work. And also this gives us an opportunity from a facility standpoint to do some extra very deep cleaning right in the middle of the week. It gives us, coming off of a weekend, we are 2 days in person. We have a little bit of a break on Wednesday, and we come back for 2 more days and we head into the weekend again. We've tried to think of everything in regards to safety of our students and staff, and we feel like maybe this model provides that situation for us. Next, please. So just some additional things that are changing on the calendar. Originally, parent-teacher conferences were scheduled for Wednesday evening, October the 28th, and Thursday and Friday, October 29th and 30th. It'll just be a short period of time that we've brought everybody back. We felt like it made more sense to gain momentum, to get our kids back in person like I said, to build those relationships, to establish those connections. And so we have looked to postpone parent-teacher conferences into the new year, and they'll be around the midpoint of January. So we'll be posting a new school calendar that'll be coming out this week as well with the new dates for parent-teacher conferences. That will also give us an opportunity to conference with parents after we've finished, obviously, the remote period that we're in for the first quarter, but the in-person quarter for the second quarter. So we feel like that made a lot of sense to postpone that to January. The preschool students, we will, with a disability, they will continue to follow their normal Monday through Thursday schedule. And many of those students have already been in on a part-time basis, but they will come in on their regular Monday, Thursday schedule. And then the preschool staff will update families of typically developing preschoolers about their plans to return to school. They will be returning also just a little bit later, a couple weeks later. Next, please. So again, the schedule that I've just outlined includes 4 days of in-person instruction, 1 day of remote learning. And again, we're going to ask staff to keep 4 guiding principles in mind. And we've been doing this as we've continued planning for the second quarter. Obviously, you as a board passed a face mask policy in July. And so face coverings will be required for all students and staff. That's K through 12 students and all staff. We're going to attempt to achieve as much social distancing as possible anywhere we can, and being creative is how we do that. Making sure that hand sanitizer and washing of hands is a common practice that is practiced throughout the day, and also making sure that supplies and surfaces like desktops, chairs, and other items in classrooms are sanitized after each use. Next, please. So what does the student experience? So even though we're all excited about bringing our students back, our staff feel that way, and we're excited to see our kids back, we do know that even though we're coming back, that teaching and learning will look a little bit different. The wearing of face masks, the social distancing, the sanitizing, all of those practices that we'll have in place will make our classrooms a little bit different. If your child receives special education services, those services will continue to be provided. Our classrooms will be rearranged to create as much distance and space as possible, so the classrooms will look different. We're also working with principals right now to modify master schedules in the building. There are some things that we can do inside the school day to reduce transitions and limit the number of students each person comes in contact with daily, and allow for sanitizing. Currently, unfortunately, we'll be following some of the guidelines that are still in place regarding field trips and large gatherings, and we will not be really, getting into those kinds of situations right now. One of the things I did want to mention, we also know that, how important it is for students to be back in school. And so getting them back in school will continue to allow us to work to achieve that social and emotional interaction that we know is so important. Elementary buildings will do morning classroom check-ins or morning meetings that they're called right now. So they'll spend time, again, getting to know students both virtually and in person. Obviously, they already know the students from the remote mode, but now for those back in person, they'll be working to do that in person. At the middle school and high school, starting with middle school, the advisory program will be in place. And the middle school principals are also looking at building in some extended, almost like a supervised study where staff can work with students to make sure that students are on track, checking in with them to see if they have any difficulties regarding any issues that they may be facing, which could be instructional or social, emotional, any of those kinds of things as well. At the high school, the advisory program will be in place as well. And again, we'll have some extended time in our classes to make sure that teachers have plenty of time to sanitize, to work with the students, and also to make sure that they're addressing the social emotional needs of their students as well. Next, please. Regarding lunch, we are going to be serving lunch every day. Our student nutrition department has worked very creatively. They will be serving hot lunch, but packaging that, so there will not be any necessarily open food on the counters like there is sometime. Those will be packaged, and students will be able to get a hot meal. Obviously, if they choose to pack their lunch, that would be fine as well. By adjusting the schedules in the building, we're going to be able to use a variety of spaces to spread students out and make sure that there is that distancing happening. We've got a lot of spaces in our building that we can do this, and we believe very effectively. Also, recess will be modified to incorporate those health and safety protocols as well. For example, we're going to be probably separating our recess playgrounds into zones, and we'll be alternating and rotating different zones that groups of students can access and play on. That we'll be rotating that on a daily basis. Next, please. Regarding health and safety protocols, I mentioned some of this already, but obviously the masks, the face coverings will be required, like I said earlier, for all K through 12 students and for staff. Social distancing will be practiced, and we're working hard to get that in place right now and to adjust classrooms, like I said just a second ago, to maximize distancing. Obviously, the other protocols like sanitizing and hand washing will be encouraged and enforced throughout all of the buildings. Please. From a health and continuing on with the health and safety protocols, we're asking our parents for some help here, and we're really asking them to help us with, screenings of their children, including temperature checks at home prior to entering school or getting on the bus. We're asking staff members and students to stay home if they're sick or displaying any kind of symptoms. I really believe this is going to be important and imperative for us to continue to, and we have to work together, and we need to enlist the help of our parents. And, many of us are kind of can-do people that, sometimes don't feel 100%, and we just come to work anyway. We kind of power through the day. And, this is a time when if we have symptoms, or if our students have symptoms, we're asking them to stay home. Obviously, there are protocols that we'll be publishing about reporting a positive case or an exposure, and we'll be working, directly with those individual cases on, when they can return to school and all those kinds of details. And this will be available on our website this week as well. And the other thing, that if students cannot report to school in person, they may continue their learning and they can stay connected remotely because they'll have their device with them. And again, the mode of operation we're asking students is to take their device, bring it to school with them every day, and take it home with them every day. So if they did test positive, for example, but their symptoms were not too great and they felt okay or good enough, they could go ahead and Zoom in, and they could continue to learn and be connected remotely. Next, please. As far as cleaning and prevention practices, our business office has worked hard really since last March to build up an inventory of all the necessary personal protection equipment. We've purchased enhanced cleaning gear, and we'll be instituting enhanced cleaning procedures in all buildings. The custodians and maintenance staff will have a procedure, an ongoing procedure daily, where they will be going through buildings, cleaning on a regular basis and disinfecting classrooms, restrooms, high-touch surfaces, common areas. We've purchased things like electrostatic cleaning machines that we'll use to disinfect larger spaces, and there'll be enough cleaning supplies and disinfectants available to clean all workspaces as needed. We've also purchased barriers and signage that we'll use in high traffic areas. I mentioned last week at the work session that we've installed touchless water bottle filling stations in each of the school buildings. So we'll encourage students to bring their own water bottles, and they can go and set those water bottles underneath these filling stations to fill them up. All of the other regular water fountains that are sometimes referred to as bubblers have been disabled right now until we get through this crisis. Like I said a couple slides ago, we're also going to be, creatively looking at and using alternative spaces that we have in all of our buildings to not only social distance, but we will also have alternative places for any students that are experiencing any kind of COVID-19 symptoms while they wait for their parents to come and pick them up. Not infect like the normal clinic area. Next, please. Transportation, we will offer routine bus transportation to and from school. That will be available. The bus seats will be limited to 2 students per seat, and siblings will be encouraged and will be made to sit together wherever possible. Students will have to wear a face covering when they are on the school bus, and the buses will also be disinfected not only just throughout the day, but before and after each trip that they take students on. And obviously, we would recommend social distancing at the bus stops as well. The other thing that's going on right now is principals also are working with our transportation department to work on procedures on how we can let students arrive in socially distant ways so that they're not congested getting off the bus or coming into a hallway or a walkway that would be congested. And the same thing, the reverse is going on right now with dismissal procedures as well. And now we're going to head into the remote learning option, which is option 2. Next, please. So again, as I said earlier in the presentation, the remote learning option will be available to all pre-K 12 students through the first semester. Students will remain with their Centerville teachers, and it will be the Centerville City Schools curriculum. Our teachers are going to be working very hard to facilitate both the in-person and the remote instruction. Because they'll be doing, both of those things, some of the aspects of remote learning will be very similar and some will be a little bit different than the first quarter. There will be, and then we may make some adjustments based on staffing and class schedules, but we're going to work hard to make sure that we're supporting all of our students, both in person and via remote instruction. And again, if your child receives special services and you are doing the total remote learning experience, those services will continue to be provided for your students. And also, even if you're a total remote learning student, you can still participate in extracurricular, co-curricular activities and athletics if you choose to do so. Next, please. So as I kind of wrap things up, I wanted to share with the board that we've been working very hard. It's something that we actually started in the summer, planning for with the hopes that we'd be able to return the second quarter in person. Our plan is to share a lot of detailed information with our school community tomorrow. And one of the first things that we'll plan to do tomorrow morning is to reach out to all families. And we would like them to confirm to make that choice once again, like they did in the summer, if they would like in-person or the remote learning option for their children. Once we get that information, we'd kind of like to keep that opportunity for parents to confirm which choice they would like to make through Friday, which is October the 2nd. And then that'll help us continue with the planning that we need to make as we move forward. So at this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have or any comments that you may have that you'd like to share.
Tom, this is John. One of the things that we've been asked by a number of parents is, do I have the opportunity to change if I send my child back in person and it's not going well? Can I make a change and have that person or that student come back to remote? Or if I choose remote, what opportunities do I have during the second quarter to choose in-person instruction?
That's a great question, John. And I think, one of the things that we can do, because students will have a device, and like I said, hopefully they'll be bringing that to school every day and taking it back home every day. that we should be able to pivot pretty quickly if for some reason parents would like to change or make a different choice for their students. And so, obviously we may need a little bit of lead time just to make some changes and to notify everybody of the change and transportation that they won't be picked up anymore, those kinds of things. But it's overall that situation should be somewhat seamless in most cases. So, and just like that student that maybe even a student that doesn't test positive with COVID, but let's say they happen to find themselves out of school for strep throat, for example, or another illness that maybe would keep them out of school for, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. They could still, take their device and zoom into the classroom and continue their learning, just like if they were in person as well.
Megan, that was one of the questions that you'd been asked before. You have other questions, Megan, you want to ask the superintendent?
No, I think that was the big one was right there. If we would be able to switch back and forth if a parent felt or if they got nervous and went to pull their kid. So, and when you, for the record, or sure everyone understands, personal devices, you mean the Chromebooks that are going to be issued by the school district. These children don't have to bring their own personal laptops. Correct?
That's correct. We have the 4,500 that have been deployed, and we, like I said, had good news that the other ones that we've ordered will be in sooner than later, and we'll be able to deploy those when we get our students back in school somewhere that week of October the 19th.
Dr. Henderson, another question we've heard, not a whole lot, but some, is why not go blended? Why don't we just go blended like we had planned rather than going in person Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, with the Wednesday being remote?
Well, I think a couple reasons. One is with our planning, we believe and we hope that we can provide, the situations following the protocols. We know that the recommendations from public health have changed. But the other thing that I have to always consider is making sure that we have enough staff to staff our classrooms. And, that can and will be a challenge, not just for us, but for all school districts across the state, really probably across the nation as well. And so, staff are allowed and can access leave provided for them as they submit the appropriate documentation. Like I said, we have currently about 130 staff members who have been able to continue to work, although those staff members have worked from home instead of coming into the classrooms. And about 103 of those are due to childcare reasons. And so with schools opening back up, that eliminates that childcare situation, and those teachers believe will be reporting and will be able to take care of moving forward and staffing our classrooms appropriately. We have worked hard also to, like we always do, to establish a sub list, but we have substitutes now that don't want to come in until the COVID situation is over or there's a vaccine and things like that. So we feel like we're maybe in better shape than some districts with our substitute teaching list, but we obviously want it as much as possible for our teachers to be back in our classrooms with our kids.
All districts are going to be looking for substitutes. There's no doubt about that.
Right, definitely.
John, could I ask a question here, please?
Absolutely.
Tom, the K1 buildings, if I'm not mistaken, both of them have shared tables in those classrooms. How are you guys going to handle the social distancing in that situation?
Well, that's a good question, Jeff. We are going to move tables around and move students at opposite ends of those tables and work hard to create as much distance as possible. We do have plexiglass dividers coming in that are going to, split. We're going to use those mostly right now in the cafeteria tables, but we'll have to see if but that's part of what we have to do moving forward after tonight's meeting, to work on our classrooms and to be creative in how we spread things out in those classrooms now.
Okay, thanks. Another question. will students, students that move from classroom to classroom, will the kids stay in a classroom and teachers move, like at CHS or one of the middle schools? You guys have a handle on that yet?
We do. We have some ideas, and we're finishing up those ideas right now. Middle school and high school, they're looking at modifying their master schedules a little bit. Some would say that it's more like a block schedule so that there would be fewer class changes. So to answer your first question, yes, we do see students, changing classes. There will be longer class periods though. There'll be time built in so that as students leave, those desktops can be sanitized. And when the new group of students come in, they'll come into sanitized furniture that they'll sit at. There are works in the process right now about establishing traffic flows, using like what I call like the painter tape that you use to tape off corners and edges so that you don't paint over there. So to direct students in certain ways and to make sure they're staying on opposite ends of the hallways and things like that. So those are all some of the things that we want to take those 2 days as we transition back to talk about routines and orient students as to the new normal, so to speak, about what schools are going to look like.
Hey, do you have something else?
Did you say Megan?
Yes.
Yeah, I do. I'm sorry. Another question I was asked was the remote learners. Will they have the same teachers? Will they just be streaming the instruction going on? How is this remote learning going to happen?
So the teachers will continue to use Google Classroom. So even for their in-person students, they will continue to put their assignments in Google Classroom and drop everything in there, for their daily lessons, their lesson plans. Grades 2 through 12 definitely will have their same teachers. And so, like I said, the teachers will open up their Zoom session and work in conjunction with their Google Classroom for both their remote students and their in-person students. We're looking at the possibilities of maybe incorporating a little bit of a different mode with our youngest learners. We're working through that right now. So whether that would be like a co-teaching model, potentially one of the teachers or some of the teachers that maybe have a health issue that could not necessarily come back and teach in person, but maybe could come back in and co-teach with one of those teachers in a remote mode and help support students. We're looking at some of those things right now. We have to kind of get our arms around and get a handle on what the numbers look like, and then we'll be able to move forward on that as we continue on. So, good question.
Other questions from board members?
Could I ask one more, John? I'm sorry. Go ahead, Alan.
No, go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead.
A quick question. If a student tests positive, does that mean that everyone in that student's classes will need to be quarantined? Do we know that answer yet?
Every situation is a little bit different and individual, and that's part of what they refer to as the contact tracing. And so, we have to take a look at the situation. We have to ask some questions. The things that we've learned from other districts are like the importance of keeping accurate and updated seating charts, for example, to see potentially who that student was close to. And so potentially, other students may have to quarantine and probably will have to quarantine. Same thing on the school bus. Again, just looking at every situation. So, a school bus, not everybody would have to quarantine necessarily off of a school bus, but potentially students that would be next to, maybe in front of or behind, may have to as well, depending on the situation. So that every situation, though, obviously it takes some time to work through those situations on a case-by-case individual basis.
Thank you.
Awesome.
A couple of questions. I know you talked about the phase-in on the 15th and 16th, which all of the K through 12 students will be attending based on their last name. What kind of additional transition time are we looking for? And this may be more directed towards Sheree or Adam. If they have something they can add. It's not going to be we show up on the 19th in person and we just hit the ground running. There's obviously going to be something built in. Can anybody speak to that?
Well, I can start, and if Adam or Sheree want to jump in, they're welcome to. But you're right. I mean, as an example, excuse me, the central office team, all of the administrators and most of our staff here at the office, we have traditionally gone out to the K-1 buildings and just been available to help with traffic flow, with bus duty, we call it, something we've always looked forward to at the beginning of every school year. So we will be at those K-1 sites, the 15th and the 16th and the 19th and the 20th and the 21st, and even longer to make sure that those routines, in this case of just, students getting off buses, going where they need to go, what doors do they go into, the reverse, we're there at least the first week of school as we help students transition to learn those routines and understand the expectations. As a former classroom teacher myself, there are days spent building those relationships and those connections and all kinds of get to know you activities. The one thing that we do have a little bit of benefit to is that our attendance has been really, really good through the whole remote learning process. So yes, this may be the first time that we've actually met in person, but we will at least know them. We have at least talked to each other, but there will be time taken to get to know students and to build connections in those relationships. Every teacher kind of has their own little way of doing that, and obviously it's done age appropriate and based on the level and those kinds of things. So it's something that will happen, and we're not going to just jump right into saying, well, we've been doing this remotely, you should know what I expect, and those kinds of things. That we understand this is unprecedented times that we're in right now, and that we have to transition, and we have to go slowly as we make those transitions.
Okay. One of the biggest questions I've gotten, and it's unfortunately a very difficult one to answer, I'm sure, is what kind of threshold are we looking at to create another pivot or change of course? And I guess more specifically, are we looking at that as more of a district-wide decision or a building by building decision based on what we're seeing in the individual buildings? Can you speak to that at all?
I can. And I would tell you that, in my opinion, probably the thing that will affect individual buildings or district-wide would be staff. And as I've watched, and I've just watched in the Miami Valley area, it seems like, when districts have not been able to cover classrooms is when they've had to shut down or do some things differently or pivot to a different mode. So I guess my answer to that is, again, I know remote learning wasn't perfect, and I appreciate that it worked really well for some families. I know it didn't work well for all families, but again, should we have to pivot, our students will have devices. Not that it would be good to do that. I hope we don't have to do that, but we could do that, I think, pretty quickly and pretty effectively. But again, to finish answering your question, Allison, I would tell you right now, I would see that as being more of a building by building decision. We have some, as you know, we have some smaller buildings and some large buildings. And so I think I haven't really put together a threshold, like a percentage of students that would be out, but I really think what really would affect us and affects most districts is your staff and what those numbers look like. We have already talked as an administrative team that, again, during these unprecedented times, that the team that we have in this district is very, very important. And we've used some phrasing like it's kind of all hands on deck. So, Tom Henderson doesn't mind going over and serving food, which he does on a regular basis sometimes anyway, just because he does that to get out with the students. But Dr. Henderson's going to go over and serve food if he's needed there. He's going to ride on the bus if there's an aide that can't ride on the bus. He'd drive the bus, but he doesn't have the right credentials to do that. but he is a teacher, and he'll go into a classroom if that's needed as well. And I know my colleagues here at the office, Dan and Adam, Cherie, we're all equipped to do that and ready to do that if needed. So we have, situations where we have contacted our people on our sub list. We've reached out to them again this morning to make sure that we have the most current and up-to-date information about their availability. So we're trying to leave no stone unturned as far as a contingency plan to make sure we can cover everything that may happen in the district. But again, obviously, if the numbers get too great, we may have to pivot to something else.
Most of the other questions I've received and that I have personally are very specific in nature at the different levels and things. I know you said you're going to be pushing out more information to families tomorrow so that they can make their decision. Can we expect some more specific information with that? And along those lines, is there a point where we can expect some visuals to be able to see whether it's a video tour or kind of a day in the life type thing at different levels, so families can be able to see and be able to adjust their comfort level with what it is going to look like when we return?
Tomorrow, we have a very extensive frequently asked questions document that's going to be pushed out, and several other things as well, kind of like Sarah's been putting out that Elks Back to School update. She'll also have this PowerPoint or this slide deck that I used tonight, also published on there as well. Some of the plexiglass partitions that we have coming in are not in just yet, but they will be installed, I believe, the first full week in October. So we can shoot some video, when those are in, and as we've started to put not only tape or dots, to establish the social distancing, like in the lunch lines or in the hallways, or different things that we have in place, that signage and other things like that we have. So we can definitely do that. But like I said, some of the equipment that's coming in for those kinds of things will be in, I believe, next week, the first full week in October, to be installed in time for the 19th. But we can do that in maybe a week from now or so, a week and a half from now, when that's all in.
Great. I know you guys have been working tirelessly since August and even before that. I think that would really, something like that, a visual to put with all of these thoughts and ideas, would really help put a lot of minds at ease and answer a lot of the super specific questions that we're all seeing. So
great. And also, Allison, it's not quite finished yet, but it will be soon. And I shouldn't say we, because it wasn't me, but it was my team here at Central Office put together a framework of kind of a day in the life of a student. And now what the building principals are all working on is personalizing it to their specific school. So that will be, given to staff, and it covers kind of the same categories that I covered tonight, lunch, arrival, dismissal, those kinds of things in categories, what that looks like, class change and stuff like that. So that also is something we've been working on, and we'll be ready to go very soon.
Wonderful. Thank you.
I have another question, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Can you let Dave do one first?
No, go ahead.
Sorry, Dr. Ward, I know you had one.
No. Go ahead, Nick.
The kids that are moving up to new buildings, like the 5th graders and stuff, will they have an opportunity to tour those schools before the October 14th date, just so they can go inside the school before they actually have to be there as a student?
That's a good question. I know that at the upper level, middle school and high school, we were looking at the afternoon of October the 14th, which is a Wednesday, which is a remote day. Currently is a remote day where the teacher's day or remote teaching ends a little bit early that day. And I think principals were going to use their office staff to maybe hand out schedules for any students that wanted to stop by. That information isn't out just yet, but there was conversation about doing that at the middle school and the high school. for those like ninth graders at the high school and those sixth graders at the middle school. So if they wanted to, they could kind of walk their schedule and the principal would be there and make sure that they kind of know where they're going, because, you know, for many of those students, you know, entering like Centerville High School, you know, where do they go when they first get there? Or where do they go when they go to middle school? So that is something that we're looking at right now. We'll be getting that information out soon. I don't quite have that answer at the elementary level, if that's been discussed at the 2 through 5 buildings just yet. But we'll push that information out as soon as I have that information available.
Dave?
My turn?
Yes.
Couple of comments first, couple of questions. First of all, I want to take the opportunity, I think, from the entire board to thank you, Tom, and everyone else, administrator-wise, teachers-wise. This has been a Herculean effort to get to this point where we can even think about bringing students back. And, you know, just by the presentation and everything that's going into this, we know you've taken a lot of time and effort to make it as safe as possible. Just a couple of things, just to clear up one of Jeff's questions in terms of quarantining. You know, one of the things right now, in terms of quarantine, the recommendations are, again, if you're within 6 feet, without a mask, and you've been together for more than 15 minutes, that could constitute a reason why some of the other classmates or teachers or whatever would need to be quarantined. So there are recommendations of why. So that 15-minute of social distancing really are very, very important. And that's why I think it's important for us to really emphasize the social distancing. We should alert parents to let them know to really talk to their children about this too. It's important as best as possible to social distance, because that's going to keep the numbers down. Just as an aside, you know, when we talk about coming back, it would be nice to have vaccines. And I think it was in the paper the other day and came out a little while ago, just so parents know, vaccines for children probably are not going to be there, if at all, until next school year. The vaccines that are coming out now, and this is just for informational purposes, the vaccines that are coming out now are being tested on adult populations. There's a whole separate testing program for pediatric use. So the vaccines that may come out early this year, early next year, are not going to be for children, which is a reason why parents need to be very vigilant. If they're going to get the vaccines, do it. If they're going to be safe, do it. You know, Tom, as you said, part of the reason we know schools may close down, Fairborn had to close down one class building. It's because typically it's the teachers that get sick. We know from our experience now that the kids don't get as sick. Something we didn't know a long time ago. And again, all these kids aren't back in school yet, so we'll still have to see. But we know that they're not getting as sick. But it's important for the kids to be safe and protected so they don't get the teachers or anyone else around them ill. So again, important for families to know that. You know, one of the questions, a quick question, you know, you talked about going back from, if you're sick, to do the optional while you're sick or out. I just want to confirm, if parents choose to go fully optional for this second quarter, are they going to be allowed to go back in class if they decide a week or two after that? I'm not sure you answered that question.
I'm sorry. Yes, so ask that one more time. I was listening, but
so if the parent chooses the remote, all remote for the second quarter,
right?
If they choose and they go back to in classroom during that second quarter, are they going to stay at remote till the end of the second quarter?
No, they can change if they want to make that change.
Okay, so in the past, originally it was if they chose remote, they were going to stay remote, so we would know what the classroom size. But you're saying they can go both ways now.
That's correct. Originally, we were looking at the potential of having an online school option, that there was a financial situation that we had to commit to. And so, you know, we were at that point, we were considering asking for a commitment for the whole semester since we were covering the cost, that financial consideration of using that. But we're using our teachers, our curriculum, and so that's not an issue anymore.
Okay. Yeah, one of the other questions to follow up on some of Allison's, which is questions we've all gotten, is what's changed? I mean, what's changed from, you know, when we made this initial decision to now to allow these students to be brought back? Now, again, I think number one is we've learned a lot about the illness right now and the kids and the prevalence and the transmission. I think it's also given us a tremendous amount of time to learn how to handle these situations and to go back to fully in class like you're doing. In terms of the health department, because again, we're still in a red. And again, I think we're optimistic and very optimistic we're going to change from red to orange, which is something that will hopefully change before October 19th. The other question was, you said that the health department has changed their recommendations in terms of going back to school. Have they actually come out and given those new recommendations, or we're still waiting to hear those recommendations?
So the remote learning recommendation that was given to us back in the summer, maybe the end of July or whatever, is changing now, and the recommendation is to get students back in school in person. The written guidelines have not come out just yet, but I don't have those in my hand right this minute. But we were all in a meeting. We, meaning all of the Montgomery County superintendents, were in a meeting with Jeff Cooper from Public Health when he talked about that with us all. I'll be in another meeting with him this Thursday morning as well, and hopefully we'll get those at that time.
So again, what's changed is the optimism that we're going to go from red to orange, and we'll get new guidelines from the health department that doesn't say their recommendation is all remote. So there are changes that we're hoping. And like you said, I think, if 2 weeks from now or a month from now, things change dramatically in the negative, we're well suited to go back to the way it was. So, kudos again to all of you. And I'm cautiously optimistic we'll get through this. We'll get these kids back to the classroom where we've always known that's where they needed to be, and that's what we always wanted. So, fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Henderson?
I had one more. It was about grading kids on remote learning versus kids in person. Will they be graded differently, or will they be the same? Because I know right now, like, my kids have a lot of open note quizzes and stuff. Will that change?
No, I mean, I think they'll continue to, in the springtime, we kind of gave a lot of grace, so to speak, to that situation as far as our grading, and it was brand new for all of us. But no, I mean, we'll continue to move forward with a normal, regular grading that we've kind of had in place since we started. But there may be some slight differences in person versus the remote, but it should continue on as they would normally have been grading. Teachers would be grading.
Dr. Henderson, I think we're coming to
one more quick comment.
Sure, Dave.
Just one quick thing. Just as a reminder to families, as we're getting back to school, one of the things that we recommend in our pediatric offices everywhere, you might want to start training your kids now that have not had to wear masks because they're doing remote learning, to start training them and getting used to it, whether it's an hour a day, 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, just to get used to wearing masks for a longer amount of time. So when they get back to school, it may not be as big a transition as it would have been had they not done anything. That would be very, very helpful.
Good advice. I think we all agree that the district has done a marvelous job. The central office team, all of the staff members, teachers, paraprofessionals, custodians, maintenance, food services, aides, they've all done a great job. I hope I didn't miss anybody. Done a great job to get to this point where we'll be able to have in-person Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. What, like Dave said before, has always been our goal, as long as we could do it safely and keep in mind the health and safety of not only the students, but also the staff. However, as Dave again pointed out, this will only be as successful as it can be if we have the parents and students complying with all the requirements, wearing masks, parents making sure that if they have a child that's got a fever, don't send them into school like we might have done when we just had a small case of the flu. But now we can't take that chance. So it's going to be important that all the parents make sure their students are aware of what the requirements are. They enforce those commitments at home. And if the child is not complying, that they make sure that they enforce that compliance when the child gets home, because we can't have some people complying and others not. It's important that everyone complies with the mask, social distancing, and making sure when their students are ready to come to school, they do not have any type of a fever that would cause some issues. And as Dr. Henderson said, we do have a lot of teachers that they will come to work when they're not feeling well, and they need to be very careful about doing that as well. But I think we have staff, I think we have central office, and I'm sure we have parents who want the best for everybody. And the way of doing that is making sure we're all complying with all the requirements that we have, listening to the teachers, listening to staff, following the barriers and the signage so that we can have a successful return, not only for the second quarter, but for the third and fourth quarter as well. Anybody else got anything?
I
Okay.
apologize. I have one other question. I know that a large piece of the Wednesday schedule is to allow the teachers time for intervention and collaboration. Are the teachers and the staff, because it's a big ask for them to now be balancing both in-person and virtual learners at the same time, are we providing additional training for them in the weeks leading up to October 19th? And can you speak to what we're doing for the staff?
Yes, actually, our two directors in the curriculum department pushed out some information today about some trainings that are going to take place as we move forward. So both Sheree and Adam have already planned those trainings, and we'll be pushing those trainings out. Also, we discussed today trainings for our substitute teachers as well. Dan always does a substitute teacher training, but because we're going to, be looking at somewhat of a quasi-remote mode too, and so we're actually putting together Adam is actually some instructional videos to help train our substitute teachers as well. So yeah, that's already in the planning, and we have dates and times scheduled for that right now. Specific. Do you want to know like some specific topics?
No, I don't need any specifics.
Okay.
I know that was a big concern from community members as well as staff members, because it is a big ask of them. It's definitely a change to anything that they've done in the past, and I'm sure it's very daunting to think about that. So just to make sure that's there for them.
Yeah, I agree with you, Allison. It's a big ask, and it's a heavy lift, and like always, we've got a fantastic staff that work really hard. So. But good question. Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Mm-hmm.
I'm prepared to move to treasurer's recommendations unless anyone's got any objections. Hearing none, treasurer's recommendations need a motion to consider approving the August 2020 financial statements, including a monthly general fund rolling report, the monthly general fund breakdown, the monthly cash reconciliation, monthly fund activity report, then and now purchase orders approved by the administration, certified by the treasurer, and supported by a board resolution totaling $566.09.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr? Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Need a motion to consider approving the minutes of the following Board of Education meetings: August 24, 2020, regular meeting, September 21, 2020, special meeting work session.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Need a motion to consider approving the FY 2021 permanent appropriations by fund totaling $189,483,723.
So moved.
Sorry, second, Megan. I'll second it.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schreier?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Need a motion to consider approving a resolution for a 5% increase to the Anthem employer/employee medical insurance premiums for calendar year 2021. Ms. Sauber, you want to explain that for members of the public listening?
Yes, our rates that we pay for our health insurance, both the board share and the employee share, will be increasing by 5% in the new year, in the calendar year 2021.
Yeah, and we're self-funded, so just increases how much we put into the fund, not only by the employer or the district, but also by the employees.
That's correct.
And the percentage remains the same, split between the employer and the employees.
It does, yes.
Need a motion, please?
You got it.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. We take all of them except D2. Is that my understanding, Dr. Henderson?
That's correct. That's fine.
Superintendent recommendations. Superintendent recommends accepting resignations as listed on Schedule A. Superintendent recommends employment, change of employment status, or change of contract status for the certificated personnel listed on Schedule B for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment of persons on the list on Schedule D and D1, supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments. Need a motion, please?
Did you want E in that one as well?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry, E. Superintendent recommends the granting of leave of absence for the personnel listed on Schedule E for the reasons on the dates given. Thank you.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Superintendent recommends the employment of personnel listed on Schedule D2 for supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments. Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Abstain, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Next we have is a transportation item, acceptance of transportation responsibilities for the 2020-2021 school year for the school districts on the students listed. We don't list the students because of safety concerns, but these are items that we do routinely every year. We need a motion, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Questions or comments? All in favor, please. I'm sorry, call the roll, please.
Mrs.
Wrong
Dern?
meeting.
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes. Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Can we take the next three all together? Is that all right? You think?
Yep.
All right, Laura?
Yeah.
Okay. Need a motion to consider a resolution approving the Title IX board policy previously discussed, to consider a resolution approving a revised teacher evaluation policy that we previously discussed, and a resolution approving the purchase of 1,468 Chromebooks for Dell for $433,456.36, as previously discussed, except it's a different company and we save money, so that's always a good thing. We need a
So
motion,
moved.
please.
So
Second.
moved.
Questions or comments? Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. The next item on our agenda is to go into executive session. Do we have anything, Dr. Hanson, before we do that? Nothing? Okay. So we need a motion pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G1, to move the board adjourn to executive session for the purpose of considering the employment of an employee of the school district. There will be no further action taken other than adjournment. Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. We'll soonly be into a separate meeting for a executive session. Thank everyone for attending, and thank everyone for online streaming. Appreciate all of the input we received. Thank you.
Thank you.